Welcome to QUT News.
Hello.
There have been two breaking developments in the Sri Lankan terror attack. Islamic State has claimed responsibility, and the carnage has also been connected to the shootings in New Zealand. Meanwhile, funerals for more than 300 people killed are underway.
It was a day of national mourning in Sri Lanka. It was also the day Australian man Sudesh Kaileigh buried his wife and daughter.
I just walked to the outside. Then the bomb went off. That's my daughter. My board tied my hand.
They were attending Sunday Easter services in Colombo.
She loves Australia. Like to sing, love to dance.
Meanwhile, it's been revealed two more Australians have been killed. Sally Bradley and Bill Harrop, a British-born couple who lived in Perth. Suspected suicide bombers have also been caught on camera entering one of the churches moments before detonating. This comes as Islamic State claimed responsibility for the attacks.
Takbir! Takbir! Takbir!
The Sri Lankan Prime Minister says it may be linked to the Christchurch massacre.
The attack is one of the reasons. It's possible it could have been because of the Christchurch attacks. We cannot say yet.
New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern responded in a statement saying she wasn't aware of the connection. Sri Lanka remains in a state of emergency with night curfews as more bombs could yet be located. Georgie Hewson, QUT News.
Hundreds of thousands of Australian veterans and their families are about to commemorate the 104th anniversary of the landing at Gallipoli, and it's begun with services for students.
On Anzac Day, at dawn, Australians will pause to remember and honour the country's fallen. And traditionally before that, students pause to pay their respects.
Anzac Day serves as a reminder that peace is a precious gift that we should never take for granted. I take great pride in seeing so many young people here today.
2,500 students from over 60 schools were keen to heed the lesson.
Seeing all of these young people here today is so inspiring for me, because without all of the kids around us, it really is hard for the legacy to continue. So to see everyone so passionate and excited to be here today means a lot to me.
Queensland's leaders repeatedly reinforced the idea of a new group carrying the torch.
The spirit of Anzac is passed from one generation to the next, and the challenge of keeping it alive is now with you.
This year, Queensland's RSL is particularly proud of the restoration of Anzac Square, even though few people were there to see it because of the holidays.
The numbers are down a little bit this year, just because of the positioning between Easter and the start of school and Anzac Day. But look, it's beautiful weather. We hope it's not going to rain, and I think it's going to be a wonderful experience for the kids.
For residents wanting to watch the Anzac Parade, the best locations are along Adelaide Street, between George Street and Creek Street between 10 and 1 p.m. As the old transitions into the new, it seems the message this Anzac Day is the passing of respect and responsibility onto the next generation of Australians. Tom Robson, QUT News.
Victorian police have released shocking vision of an attack on a kebab shop worker by drunken louts. His jaw was shattered in several places.
The 31-year-old man in Windsor was punched in the face, leaving him unconscious and sending him to the hospital with a broken jaw. According to the victim, identified only as Kassoon, the four men were heavily intoxicated. One of them grabbed Kassoon's bicycle, which was chained to a tree, and then rode it around the store. When the shopkeeper asked for it back, one of the men throws a punch, breaking his jaw.
I can't remember after he hit me anything because I was blacked out. The next day morning I just woke up in the hospital.
Police were stunned by the severity of the attack, leaving Kassoon with thousands of dollars in medical expenses. He is slowly recovering.
It's terrible, you can't express it because, the way I talk right now, even I can't eat anything.
Police are still trying to trace the assailants. Luca Kesseling, QUT News.
The election campaign has moved to the north of Australia, with both parties trying to win over voters in marginal areas, but they'll have a break on Anzac Day.
On the eve of Anzac Day, the leaders of the major parties have paid tribute to veterans. Bill Shorten was in Townsville, jogging with NRL legend Jonathan Thurston, and getting a lecture on tax cuts for higher earners from one local.
Good to see the higher wage team come in and just give them a tax break. A lot of the guys here do overtime. They earn $250,000 a year because they work nights.
Well, we're going to look at that.
But the opposition leader's main focus was helping casual workers get steady employment. He's suggesting they should be able to apply for permanent jobs after 12 months in the same company. That idea worries some employers. The very people Prime Minister Scott Morrison was addressing at a breakfast in Darwin. He used the occasion to hit out at the Labor leadership in the Northern Territory.
The Gunner Labor government is the worst government in the country. They really are. They have made an absolute hash.
The Prime Minister has also promised more money for veteran services. Georgie Hewson, QUT News.
Police have seized $34 million of cocaine in a Sydney drug bust. 68 kilograms of the drug were found hidden in wooden pallets carrying tables and chairs imported from South Africa. The blocks of cocaine bore images of legendary guerrilla leader Che Guevara and weighed 1 kilo each. A man has been arrested and refused bail.
Right-wing political parties have secured the top 3 spots on Queensland's Senate ballot paper for the coming election. They are the Rise Up Australia Party, Pauline Hanson's One Nation, and Clive Palmer's United Australia Party. The LNP took 4th spot, the Greens 8th, and Labor is back at number 10. Positioning on the ballot paper often determines how many votes each party ends up with.
A new survey has revealed serious discrimination against vision-impaired people and their guide dogs. 50% of handlers are regularly denied access to businesses and public transport.
It's International Guide Dog Day, and that's something worth celebrating. But a national survey found 1 in 2 handlers are discriminated. That's forced them to change and stop their normal routines, and it's illegal.
I actually received a phone call on the Sunday morning while I was there from the owner of the accommodation, and was basically abused for not telling them that I had a guide dog.
It's enough to make even the cutest guide dog puppy in training barking mad.
I do find it really surprising because I thought that it was legal for guide dogs to be able to go anywhere.
And that's right. Under Australian law, guide dogs are legally entitled to go wherever their owner does. And service providers can be fined if they deny access. But the survey found that cafes and restaurants were the most reported sites that refused entry at 71%. That was followed by taxis and rideshare companies like Uber. Guide Dogs Queensland says it's due to the lack of education.
One-on-one, about educating people and then using opportunities like this to get a more general message out to the public.
And we should all think about this.
It is quite confrontational, but I guess the main thing is you just feel less of a person, that you don't have the rights that every other person has.
Alexis Moran, QUT News.
Looking again at our main story, the terror attack in Sri Lanka described as retaliation for the Muslim shootings in Christchurch.
And still to come, a controversial send-up of former Prime Minister Tony Abbott under fire. Detectives are perplexed by the discovery of a woman's body in the streets of Melbourne's Chinatown. They aren't sure if it's a natural death or foul play.
Police closed off Little Bourke Street. What usually is a busy street in Chinatown came to a virtual standstill as they investigated the discovery of a woman's body.
As the matter is an ongoing investigation in the very, very early stages, I can't give you any further information.
A passerby found a woman slumped against a wall around 6:30 a.m. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Detectives aren't sure how she died because there were no obvious signs of injury.
Suffice to say that the cause of the death at this point in time is unknown.
They want anyone who saw the woman to contact them. Annie Penn, QUT News.
In a world first, doctors in Malawi are trialling a vaccination against malaria. It may help prevent one of the globe's worst killers.
The scientific community has spent more than a century looking for a malaria vaccine. This one, known as RTSS, took 30 years to develop.
And what we're witnessing today is the deployment, for the first time in history, of a malaria vaccine, which happens to also be a first vaccine against a human malaria parasite.
Malaria is still one of the world's greatest killers, with 435,000 people dying for the disease each year. In Africa, more than 200 million cases are diagnosed yearly, with 215,000 children dying.
This malaria vaccine is very important for Malawi because malaria is a huge public health problem in Malawi. We see about 6 million cases each year, and we register close to 3,000 deaths each year.
The vaccine has passed through clinical trials and will be used in Ghana and Kenya after Malawi's in the coming weeks. The WHO is aiming to vaccinate 316,000 children up to 2 years old every year. Over the next 5 years, that would equate 1.5 to 2 million children vaccinated in the high malaria transmission areas. Annie Penn, QUT News.
With rain threatening, Paris workers are now scrambling to cover the badly damaged Notre Dame with tarps. After this catastrophic fire that destroyed the cathedral's roof, the interior is very exposed. But it's a dangerous job because parts of the building are still unstable. Professional mountain climbers were called in to work around the crumbling woodwork as quickly as possible.
NASA has detected what it believes is a Marsquake, just 5 months after launching a robotic space probe called InSight. This is the first time a seismological tremor has been recorded on Mars. InSight is the first spacecraft specifically to study the depths of other planets. Scientists believe the trembling came from inside the planet, as opposed to being caused by wind.
The activist group Get Up has pulled the plug on an advertisement targeting former Prime Minister Tony Abbott. A satirical suggestion that he wouldn't help a drowning person drew widespread criticism on social media.
This is a spoof which was criticised for its insensitivity, timing and subject matter.
Tony! Someone's drowning!
Look, I think you'll find that the science isn't settled on that.
What? One critic labelled it as not Get Up's best judgment, while another said, "I will never forget this type of sickening behaviour." Get Up was forced to remove the video less than a day after it appeared online. The lobby group also apologised to Australia's lifesavers, saying they have the greatest respect for the work all lifesavers do. This is not the first time Get Up has taken the mickey out of prominent pollies. During the 2010 election campaign, they took aim at 3 leaders in one hit.
How can you trust a government? The attack have already started.
Oh, fair shake of the sauce bottle, mate.
Get Up may be wounded, but they're unrepentant. They say their next mock instalment of the Warringah MP's antics will be released next week. No doubt we'll be hearing plenty more about it on social media. Leanne Neeby, QUT News.
The US Supreme Court wants to add citizenship questions to the next census, but it's being met with huge opposition because some immigrants fear they could be persecuted.
It's claimed the move to add citizenship questions would yield better data, and it would hand President Donald Trump's administration a victory. But a coalition of immigrants' rights groups say it'll deter participants.
I feel that it might be going in the wrong direction, but I hope that it's not. This country is formed from a lot of immigrants, and I feel that we should be represented equally as in anyone in the United States.
Opponents say they won't be filling out the census, fearful their information would be misused. This woman says she doesn't want to answer the questions because she's afraid the information will be shared with law enforcement.
People just want to be counted. People want to make sure that they have accurate and fair representation, make sure that their communities are funded and they have the resources that they need.
The Census Bureau itself estimates 6.5 million people won't respond to the citizenship questions, leading to less accurate data. Lukai Kesseling, QUT News.
In Rugby League news, Phil Gould has left his job at the Penrith Panthers. He says it was simply time.
There were tears from players and staff as Gould left the place he'd called home for many years. First as a player, then coach, and finally a boss. Some say he jumped, others that he was pushed. The board met today to decide the exit strategy. Penrith's chairman denies there were any dramas.
I've had a great relationship with Phil and they're grown men, him and I, when they get on, they know their jobs and so forth.
Commentators say Gould won't be out of work for long. Both the Cronulla Sharks and the Dragons are already showing interest. In AFL, the Melbourne Demons have swung the axe ahead of the Anzac Eve clash. They've made 5 changes to their lineup, while the Richmond Tigers have just 1 change. Jack Revolt returns from a wrist injury. More than 70,000 fans will pack out the MCG. Tom Robson, QUT News.
The weather details are next with Kaileigh Carew.
And wooing children to Rugby League.
Hello, it's time to take a look at the weather, and it's been a bit of deja vu. It was still cloudy with showers across most of the state during the day. As a result, temperatures only reached 27 in Brisbane and Ipswich. The coasts were a little cooler, but not much, 26 at the Gold Coast and 27 in the Sunshine Coast. Around the nation tomorrow, it'll be cloudy with a chance of rain in Melbourne, Hobart and Adelaide, but mostly sunny in Sydney, Canberra, Perth and Darwin. Back in Queensland, it will be partly cloudy with showers for most of the coastal areas, including Cairns, Townsville and Mackay. On Moreton Bay, southeasterly winds will reach 15 knots with seas to below 1 metre, and the sun will rise 10 minutes past 6 and set at 22 minutes past 5 tomorrow. The Gold Coast is likely to be partly cloudy tomorrow with a top of 26. The Sunshine Coast can expect a top of 26. Brisbane will be gloomy tomorrow, reaching a high of 27, but things look sunnier for the next 2 days, reaching a high of 29 on Friday and 28 on Saturday. That's the weather for now. Back to you.
And finally, what sport do you want your child to play? Parents once turned away from the more physical contact sports like Rugby League, but they are well and truly coming back.
With a reputation for injury and off-field scandal, it's not hard to understand why Aussie parents might push their children towards other sports. But mums and dads are still registering their future Rugby League stars to play. Last year, the Queensland Rugby League saw increased participation in all age groups up to 13 years.
It's a team sport and you get to play with mates from your team. And when new people join your team, you get to make new friends.
I think it's a good sport because you get to tackle and run and score tries.
Parents say the game is safer than ever, especially with changed rules which discourage dangerous tackles in junior grades.
NRL really train the coaches and then the kids to tackle properly, to learn how to play the game properly.
Even more kids will be exposed to the game after the NRL's Magic Round in May, when 16 teams play across one weekend at Suncorp Stadium.
I think it's going to bring a lot of energy to the city. And hopefully the Brisbane people get behind it and support it.
8 of the 16 teams descending on Brisbane for Magic Round will give young people the opportunity to meet and train alongside their sporting heroes.
I mean, Charlie, my little boy, wants to be a Bronco when he grows up, so this is amazing to me. Darius Boyd and Darren Lockyer, his heroes. It's just fantastic. It's a dream come true.
Alicia McLaren, QUT News.
That brings you up to date with QUT News. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.